We are considering 5 nominees to be the associate judges on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Sherri Beatty Arthur, Rahkel Bouchet, Erin Johnston, McKenzie, and Truong. Welcome to each of our nominees and to your friends and family members who I know are joining you. We welcome all of you here to this committee. And congratulations on your nominations, and thank you. It's a very sincere thank you for your willingness to take on a very challenging role at the D.C. Superior Court as a judge. The D.C. Superior Court functions as the state-level trial court here in the nation's capital. The court handles some of the highest case volumes in the country and is strained further by extended vacancies on the bench. Every day, judges of the Superior Court decide matters that impact the freedom, the livelihoods, and the safety of individuals and families all across the District of Columbia. Currently, 13 of the 62 seats on the current court are vacant, delaying cases and placing serious burdens on current judges. This committee has advanced 7 Superior Court nominees this Congress, but most are unfortunately still waiting to be confirmed by the full Senate. I'm glad that we will be voting on 2 of these nominees, however, later today. Tanya Jones-Berger and Judith Pipe both currently serve as magistrate judges on the Superior Court and have dedicated their legal careers to serving the people of the District of Columbia. And I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting these well-qualified nominees, and I hope we'll be able to fill the remaining vacancies to the court very soon. To the nominees here today, I look forward to learning more about your qualifications as well as your plans for serving the Superior Court bench. It is the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses, so if each of you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. You may be seated. Our first nominee is Sherri Beatty Arthur, nominated to be the Associate Judge on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Judge Beatty Arthur has served as a magistrate judge for the Superior Court since 2020. Prior to her appointment as a magistrate judge, she served as an administrative law judge for the District of Columbia Office of Administrative Hearings. And earlier in her career, Judge Beatty Arthur held positions at the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Public Defender Service for the District of Columbia, as well as private practice. She received her JD from Howard University School of Law in 1998, her BA from the University of Maryland, College Park in 1995, as well as an MBA from the University of Maryland, University College in 2011. Judge, welcome to the committee. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Chairman Peters.
Microphone, please.
Oh, gotta press the button. Okay. Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and members of the committee, thanks. I am humbled and honored to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. I'd like to thank the committee staff for its time and dedication in preparing for this hearing. I'd like to thank President Joseph Biden for nominating me. I'd also like to thank all the members of the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission, especially its chair, the Honorable Marie Johns, for recommending me to the White House, and to the former chair, the Honorable Emmett Sullivan, for his continued support. I'd also like to thank Chief Judge Anita Josie Herring for her leadership and constant encouragement, and former Chief Judge Robert Morin for appointing me as a magistrate judge to Superior Court in 2020. I am very proud to say I'm a native Washingtonian. My education and career has been in Washington, D.C. or its nearby jurisdictions. But my story really begins in rural Alabama and North Carolina through my parents, Howard and Wynell. My father came to Washington after serving this country in the Air Force in the early days of Vietnam, and my mother traveled here from Alabama the day after her graduation, seeking new opportunities. My parents came here and made a good life for me and my brother Tony. They taught us that if we worked hard in both school and our professional lives, anything would be possible. Frankly, they gave up everything so that we could have everything. My dad passed away in 2001, but I continue to carry his many lessons with me, especially about the importance of hard work. I'd also like to thank my mother, Wynell Beatty, who is here with me today, for her never-ending encouragement and for constantly championing the importance of my education. I'd also like to thank my brothers, Tony and Reggie, my in-laws, Errol and Violet Arthur, who are also here with me today, my sisters-in-law, Shayna Arthur and Justine Jacquez, my brother-in-law, Justin Jacquez, my nephews, Kevin, Isaiah, Jeremy, and Jacob, for cheering me on in all of my pursuits, and I must thank all of my friends who keep me in constant prayer. I reserve a special thanks to my husband and best friend, the Honorable Errol R. Arthur, who is here with me today. Errol and I are birds of the same feather, and for 31 years, he's been a constant and unwavering support. Errol and I have walked together in our lifelong pursuits in public service, and I wouldn't be here without him. I also would like to say I'm the proud mother of two spectacular children. I am joined by my son, Miles Arthur, who is a proud graduate of Morehouse College, and my daughter, Layla Arthur, who is a rising senior at Spelman College. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve at the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, where I began my career as a student attorney with DC Law Students in Court almost 25 years ago. Thereafter, I began a legal career handling employment law cases at both the United States Department of Agriculture and at the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. After that, I worked as a partner at Arthur & Arthur PLLC, where I represented clients in family law cases, small business development, and other civil matters. Thereafter, I served as the Director of Human Resources for the Public Defender Service for the District of Columbia. After that, I served as an administrative law judge for the District of Columbia at the Office of Administrative Hearings, where I heard thousands of cases in every jurisdiction, including public works, unemployment compensation, licensing and enforcement, and rental housing. Since 2020, I've been a magistrate judge for the District of Columbia, where I preside over, again, thousands of cases in paternity and support, juvenile new referrals, and in abuse and neglect. It has been an honor to serve the citizens of Washington, D.C. throughout my career. I am humbled by this opportunity, and if confirmed as an associate judge, I will continue to serve my community. I look forward to answering any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Judge. Our next nominee is Rahkel Bouchet. Judge Bouchet has served as a magistrate judge for the District of Columbia Superior Court since 2016 and is currently the deputy presiding magistrate judge. Prior to joining the bench, Judge Bouchet spent over 15 years in private practice focusing on family and criminal law. She also previously served as the supervising attorney for the Child Welfare and Family Justice Clinic at Howard University School of Law from 2013 to 2015. Judge Bouchet received her JD from Howard University School of Law in 1997 and her BA cum laude from Howard University in 1993. Judge Bouchet, wonderful to have you here. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to appear before you as you consider my nomination to be an Associate Judge of the District of Columbia Superior Court. I am deeply grateful, humbled, and honored to appear before you. I would like to also express my sincere appreciation to the committee members and dedicated committee staff for considering my nomination. I would like to thank the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission, particularly its former chair, Judge Emmett Sullivan, for recommending me to the White House, and I am grateful to President Joseph R. Biden for nominating me for this position. I want to thank Chief Judge Anita Josie Herring for her support and leadership. I am grateful to God for being here, and I would like to begin by introducing my family, many of whom are here today with me. My mother, Attorney Rahkel Bouchet, upon whose bold shoulders I stand, for her guidance, love, and support. As a single mother, she gave me the foundation of faith and taught me to be a woman of integrity, to work hard, and to strive for excellence. I want to acknowledge my maternal grandmother, Alma Pearl Rivero, the matriarch of my family, who had dreams of being a lawyer, but never attended college. She passed away in December of 2020. I am proud that she witnessed her dreams manifested in me and my appointment to the bench as a magistrate judge. I know that she is here in spirit. I want to acknowledge my children, Dominique Jackson, a determined young woman, and a proud third generation from my alma mater, Howard University. She just completed her first year at Howard University College of Dentistry. And my son, Stephen Jackson, a brilliant young man. He is a rising junior at Morehouse College, majoring in film and television, and a minor in Mandarin, and also a concentration in Spanish. I was a single mother during most of their formative years, and they have been my reason for being, my inspiration, and my greatest source of joy and pride. And I love you both. I want to also acknowledge my daughters, Erin Fontenot, a courageous and driven young woman, and Lauren Fontenot, an extremely talented culinary artist, who have lovingly accepted Dominique, Stevie, and me into their lives. It has been such a blessing to watch my children blossom into the strong women and young man they are today. I hope that this moment is a testament to all my children as to what is possible when you walk in faith and refuse to accept limitations for yourself. And I must thank my wonderful husband, Eddie Fontenot, an exceptionally talented artist, for his unwavering support and unconditional love. Thank you for being my best friend, an amazing husband, and a loving father to all of our children. I want to acknowledge my brothers, Tony and Terry Williams, my godparents, Thomas and Mary Leonard, my aunt, Sandra Bolden, and my uncle, Emil Rivero, who are here today in support. I would also like to thank my extended family and dear friends for their love and encouragement. I must acknowledge former Chief Judge Satterfield for giving me the opportunity to serve as a magistrate judge, and former Chief Judge Robert Morin for encouraging me to apply for this position. I want to acknowledge my court family, in particular, my magistrate judges colleagues. Without them, the Superior Court would grind to a halt. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our judicial administrative assistants in the magistrate judges' chambers, law clerks, and my colleagues on the bench who have mentored and supported me throughout my career. And I must also acknowledge Attorney Gregory Copeland, whose advice and counsel set me on a course that led to this moment. I was born in Los Angeles, California, and initially moved to the District of Columbia to follow in my mother's footsteps and attend Howard University and Howard University School of Law. In 2007, I returned to the District of Columbia to start my private practice, appearing primarily in the DC Superior Court. During my years as a sole practitioner, I represented the district's most vulnerable families, and I had the honor of supervising the Child Welfare Family Justice Clinic at Howard University School of Law, overseeing talented law students and helping shape them into lawyers. In 2016, I was appointed as magistrate judge with the DC Superior Court, and I have had the honor of presiding over many of the district's high-volume courtrooms in the family, domestic violence, civil, and criminal divisions with the necessary humility and integrity to ensure that the law is upheld and that litigants have a fair and just experience. I am confident that I am well equipped to take on the added responsibility of being an associate judge because I bring diverse experience as a litigator and magistrate judge. Thank you for considering my nomination.
Well, thank you, Judge. Our next nominee is Erin Johnston. Ms. Johnston is currently a litigation partner at Kirkland & Ellis, LLP in Washington, D.C., where she has practiced since 2007. During her time at Kirkland & Ellis, Ms. Johnston has handled a wide range of complex commercial matters, including fraud, antitrust, securities, government investigations, and appeals. She has also maintained a robust pro bono practice representing many clients in the D.C. Superior Court. Ms. Johnston received her J.D. from New York University School of Law in 2007 and her B.A. cum laude from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2003. Ms. Johnston, welcome to the committee. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and members of this esteemed committee, thank you for considering me for the role of Associate Justice of the D.C. Superior Court. I would like to thank your staff for their courtesy and professionalism. Thank you to the Judicial Nomination Commission, and especially its chair, the Honorable Marie C. Johns, for recommending me to the White House. I would also like to thank President Joseph Biden for nominating me. I am deeply grateful to the judges of the D.C. Superior Court and Chief Judge Anita Josie Herring for all of the generous encouragement I have received throughout this process. I am most grateful to my family. I am fortunate to have extended family across this country. Here with me today from California is my sister, Stacey Gomez. She has been by my side in every important moment in my life. She was the first to envision my nomination to the judiciary, and I thank her for her steadfast belief in me and my potential. I reserve special thanks for my 3 children, who are also here with me today. My children are my inspiration. They make me better, and they are my most fun cheerleaders every day. My mother worked hard to provide me with the educational opportunities available in this country that had not been available to her. It was those efforts that enabled me to find my way to the New York University School of Law. Since graduating from law school, I have lived here in the district. It has been a privilege to belong to such a vibrant community and to raise my children here. I have spent my professional career at the Washington, D.C. office of Kirkland & Ellis. I have worked on large-scale litigation involving complex and novel legal issues that reflect the vast array of subject matters that touch our courtrooms, from contract claims and torts to statutory interpretation and criminal matters. I have now taken several cases from inception through appeal, gaining extensive firsthand experience with every stage of the litigation process. The matters that have meant the most to me have been my pro bono work. I have spent nearly 2,000 hours on pro bono work over the course of my career, including handling several family law cases before the D.C. Superior Court. In choosing this work, I sought to represent families that otherwise would not have had access to counsel during what was often the most pivotal and challenging moments of their lives. I saw firsthand the impact of the justice system on the residents of the district. It would be a privilege to contribute to these cases from the bench at the D.C. Superior Court. The breadth and depth of my experience have prepared me well for the wide range of matters that the D.C. Superior Court faces each day. I have learned the value of hard work and preparation, how to communicate effectively with people from all walks of life, and the importance of the dignity of each person involved in the judicial process. In my practice in states and federal courts across the country, I have seen judges who embody a reverence for the rule of law, listen with an open mind, move matters forward thoughtfully and effectively, and lead with steady compassion. If confirmed, this is the kind of judge I would endeavor to be. I would be grateful to serve the district by dedicating myself in every case to the rule of law and providing equal access to justice. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you. And our next nominee is Ray McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie is currently a principal at Miles and Stockbridge in Washington, D.C., where he recently moved his practice after founding and running a boutique law firm specializing in white-collar defense and compliance from 2019 to 2024. Prior to starting his own firm, Mr. McKenzie served as an assistant U.S. attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Maryland from 2015 to 2019. Earlier in his legal career, Mr. McKenzie worked at Skadden Arps in Washington, D.C., and served as a law clerk on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. Prior to law school, Mr. McKenzie taught 5th and 6th grade at public schools in Virginia. Thank you. A very important and challenging job. We appreciate that. Mr. McKenzie also received his JD from the University of Virginia School of Law in 2008 and his BA and Master of Teaching from the University of Virginia in 1998. He also earned his Master of Divinity from Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University in 2003. Mr. McKenzie, welcome. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Chairman Peters, Ranking Member, and members of the committee, let me first begin by expressing my appreciation to God for allowing me the opportunity to be here today appearing before you. Let me also sincerely thank each of you on the committee and the members of your staff for your hard work and dedication. Thank you for convening this hearing and considering my nomination. I must express my heartfelt gratitude to the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission, its chair, the Honorable Marie Johns, its vice chair, the Venerable Ben Wilson, and its other members for their service to the citizens of the District of Columbia and for recommending me to the White House. I also express my appreciation to the former chairman of the JNC, the Honorable Emmett Sullivan, who encouraged me to apply to serve as an associate judge. as well as the judges on the Superior Court bench and other courts who have been sources of encouragement, information, and inspiration throughout this process. I also must share my profound appreciation and thanks to President Joseph R. Biden for nominating me for this position. It is a great honor to be nominated to the Court of General Jurisdiction for the city where my wife and I have lived for the last 16 years and where we are raising our family. As a young man growing up on the south side of Richmond, surrounded by poverty and other challenges, but shielded and secured by faith and love, I could not have imagined I would come to these hallowed grounds as a judicial nominee. I am deeply and profoundly honored and humbled. I have a few of the most important people in my life with me here today. My father, the Reverend Dr. Ray McKenzie Jr., for whom I am named, is here with me in the flesh. My mother, Ingrid, who passed in 2000, is here with me in spirit. She and my father instilled in me the importance of faith, service, education, and perseverance, which have provided the foundation for the person I am. Although she could not be here today, I acknowledge my bonus mother, the Reverend Dr. Faith Harris, who has been a loving and restorative partner for my father and a supportive encouragement for me. I likewise am grateful that one of my siblings, David, is here with me today. I recognize the sacrifice he is taking to be here. I am grateful for our shared experiences growing up and beyond, and I know my late sister, Rachel, is smiling down on us from heaven. I would like to also acknowledge my nieces and nephews, Ayana, Justin, Joshua, Malachi, Elijah, Alana, Hallie, and Jason. Additionally, I am very pleased to have with me my godmother, Dr. Barbara M. Amos, whose counsel and guidance have been invaluable to me and my family throughout the years. I reserve special honor and thanks for my wife, Crystal, and my children, affectionately known as the 3 E's, Ethan, Ella, and Elliot. They are here with us today. Without Crystal's love, support, and occasionally her helpful and constructive lectures, I would not be here today. Words cannot express my gratitude to you and my love for you. The joys and challenges of rearing our children and the patience they continue to teach me have made me a better man. Relatedly, I am pleased to have Crystal's mom, Sharon, who I call Mama Hill, with me here today. Thank you. Penultimately, I must express deep and sincere gratitude to my judicial role model and mentor, the Honorable James R. Spencer, who hired me as a law clerk out of law school when he was the chief judge on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. Judge Spencer was the consummate trial judge who demonstrated keen preparation, humility, and above all, fidelity to the rule of law. I will endeavor to demonstrate all these attributes should I be confirmed as an associate judge for the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. In closing, I must note that the law is a second career for me. I spent the first 7 years out of college as a public school educator. Since deciding to take on this new adventure in the law, I've had the blessing of serving in a variety of roles that I believe have prepared me for this position. The opportunity to now return to public service as an associate judge on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia is awe-inspiring. I'll draw upon those very experiences as a federal prosecutor, defense attorney, and public school teacher in this new role if I'm confirmed. Thank you for considering my nomination. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Our final nominee is John Truong. Mr. Truong is currently a Deputy Chief in the Civil Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, where he has served since 2013. From 2008 to 13, Mr. Truong served as Assistant U.S. Attorney in the office's Criminal Division, where he prosecuted misdemeanor and felony crimes in the D.C. Superior Court. Earlier in his legal career, Mr. Truong also worked as an associate at the law firm Morgan Lewis and as a law clerk for the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Mr. Truong received his J.D. from American University in 1997, his M.A. in 2003, and his B.A. from the University of Southern California in 1993. Mr. Truong, welcome to the committee. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Ranking Member Paul, and the members of this committee, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today for consideration of my nomination to be an Associate Judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. I also want to thank your dedicated and hardworking staff for the hearing today. I am tremendously grateful and honored to be nominated by President Biden earlier this year and by former President Trump in 2020. I also want to thank the DC Judicial Nomination Commission and its chairs, the Honorable Marie Johns, as well as the former chair, Judge Emmett Sullivan, for recommending me to the White House. I can say with great humility and honesty that I would not have attained my many accomplishments without Judge Ricardo M. Urbina of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, for whom I had the privilege to clerk. His mentorship and friendship have guided me throughout my professional and personal life. I also want to thank former U.S. Attorneys Channing Phillips and Jesse Liu, and the current U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves. I am very fortunate to have served under each of these extraordinary leaders. I am very grateful for the support of my family and friends. Some are here today, some are watching this hearing remotely. I am the proud husband of Sabrina Vasa, an accomplished attorney and an amazing mother. In fact, today is also a very special day, as it is Sabrina's birthday. Happy birthday, honey. I love you. We are truly blessed to have two loving daughters, 4-year-old Priyanka and 2-year-old Anjali, who are the most fun and funny tiny humans I know. They are the love and joy of my life, and they are my greatest achievement. I also want to thank my younger brother, Kent, who is my role model, and my sister-in-law, Dr. Rahkel Bouchet, for their love and support. I am a proud uncle of my niece, Grace, who is a rising senior at George Washington University, and my nephew, Ben, a rising senior in high school. They all travel from California to be here with me today. I reserve a special thank to my mother-in-law, Elizabeth Preeti Vickers, who is kind and generous with her time and love and is a doting grandmother. She traveled from Nebraska to be here with us today. Ultimately, who I am as a person is because of my parents, Brian Truong and Mai Nguyen. My parents made a courageous decision to separate our family to save our lives, not knowing whether we would see each other again. My father and I escaped from Vietnam first in a fishing boat, landed in a refugee camp in Hong Kong, and eventually immigrated to the United States. A year later, my mother and my younger brother traversed that same dangerous journey, and the entire family was thankfully reunited as both people refugees in this country. My parents came to this country with little personal possessions and did not know the language of our adopted home, but they were filled with hope and faith. They instilled in me the value of education, good work ethics, and perseverance. My parents work hard and make sacrifices so that I can be here today. I have been a part of the DC legal community for more than 25 years. I began as a federal judicial law clerk and went on to private practice, where I worked in complex civil litigation for 6 years. I later joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. During my 19 years as a civil and criminal assistant U.S. attorney, I gained a broad spectrum of legal experiences, including 5 years when I worked exclusively in the criminal division, where I prosecuted misdemeanor and felony crimes in D.C. In 2022, I was promoted to become a deputy chief for the civil division, where I supervise and counsel assistant U.S. attorneys in all aspects of federal district court litigation. It has been a great honor for me to represent the United States to enforce the law and to defend its interests in courts. I hope to now have the opportunity to serve the members of this community in a new role if confirmed to be served as an associate judge. Thank you again for considering my nomination. I look forward to answering any questions that the committee may have.
Well, thank you. There are 3 questions that this committee asks of every nominee. So I'm going to ask each of you just to briefly respond with a yes or no. Other questions will require a more detailed answer, but this is the straightforward part. Ms. Beatty Arthur, we'll start with you, and then we'll just work down the table. First question, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated? Judge?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No.
Second, do you know of anything, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No.
And lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Judge Beatty Arthur and Judge Bouchet, as magistrate judges on the D.C. Superior Court, you are all very familiar with the impact of the pervasive vacancies that are on the court, things that I talked about in my opening comments. So I'd like each of you, if you would please describe the challenges the court currently faces due to these vacancies and how you and your colleagues have adapted. Ms. Beatty Arthur, you want to start?
Sure. I've been on several high-volume courtrooms, specifically,
No. Move it in front of your mouth more, the microphone.
okay. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. I've been on several high-volume courtrooms, specifically paternity and support, which hears thousands and thousands of cases. Then I moved on to juvenile new arraignments, which were similarly situated. The idea that you have to keep in mind is even though the numbers are high, when people come to court, they're not concerned about the high numbers. They plan for their day in court. So I must go there and give them their appropriate time. So I feel like the judge has the responsibility to set the tone in the room. Specifically, I always come to court prepared. I let the parties know what my expectations are. I don't typically allow for many continuances because continuances, of course, slow down the court as well. So the challenge is that it doesn't matter how many cases there are, business must continue. So I'm well versed on how to handle those additional challenges.
Yes, Judge Bouchet.
Thank you. I was appointed to the bench in 2016, and I have been a magistrate judge for the past 8 years. I have presided over many of the high-volume calendars in the District of Columbia, the civil, family, domestic violence, and criminal division. As a magistrate judge, we have played a substantial role in addressing the vacancies and in an effort to address the backlog to ensure that the court meets the needs of the District of Columbia. I have found that coming to court prepared and familiar with the record, understanding the issues that are before the court, affords me the time to allow the parties to have a fair opportunity to be heard. When you set expectations of the parties, especially the attorneys, they come to court prepared as well. I am confident that the experience and the skills that I have developed as a magistrate judge will allow me to help the Superior Court as an associate judge if I am confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question will be directed to Ms. Johnston, Mr. McKenzie, and Mr. Truong. We'll just start with you, Ms. Johnston, and then move down the table. If confirmed, you will decide matters that impact the freedom, the livelihoods of the families and individuals that are going to come before you. So my question for each of you is, how will you ensure that each person who comes before you has a meaningful opportunity to be heard, and especially those who may not be represented by counsel? Ms. Johnston, you can begin, and then Mr. McKenzie, and then Mr. Truong.
Thank you. I believe that it is important, especially with unrepresented parties, to have strong communication skills and to speak in straightforward terms and avoid legal jargon when communicating with any litigants that are appearing in court, but especially those who do not have counsel with them. And I think that it's important for judges to come to each hearing fully prepared and with a mastery of the facts so that they can efficiently focus on the key issues and provide an effective resolution to the case for the parties that appear before them.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie.
I think it is very important to have good communication skills in communicating, particularly with pro se litigants or litigants who are not represented. I've had the great privilege over the last 3 or 4 years to serve as an arbitrator for the American Arbitration Association in consumer matters. And in many of those cases, the parties are not represented, or one side is and one side isn't. What I endeavor in each of those cases to do is to understand fully the law that applies, learn the facts from the parties, and be very explicit and clear in what arguments are important, what issues I'll be considering in a particular hearing. I think people need to be heard when they come to court, and I'll endeavor to do that if confirmed.
Thank you.
I share my fellow nominees' thoughtful responses, Senator. I want to add that, in addition, if confirmed, I would commit to the ideals of due process, which means that I will make sure that those represented and unrepresented to have the opportunity to be heard, meaning to explain myself clearly, make the courtroom proceedings understandable to the layperson, and commit to the idea of respecting the litigants and for those unrepresented appearing before me.
Thank you. Senator Langford has deferred his questions. Senator Butler, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding the hearing. As you noted in your opening remarks, and our nominees have spoken to, the vacancies of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia truly does impede the city's residents from receiving timely access to justice, and I'm glad that we are here today to do some work to address that issue. I'm particularly proud to see that so many of these exceptional nominees have California roots. Ms. Bouchet as a native Angelino, Ms. Johnston as a UCLA graduate, and Mr. Truong, USC. I'm sure if we dug deep enough, we find some California background in our other 2 nominees as well. Needless to say, no matter what state or geography they come from, they are incredibly qualified to meet the moment of disseminating justice in the District of Columbia. With that, I'd like to focus my questions on the caseload and the tremendous backlog that the residents of the district are facing relative to experiencing justice in their cases. We know that the Superior Court of the District of Columbia serves about 671,000 people in Washington, D.C., and the latest statistics show that overall, new case filings are increasing by 41%, nearly 45,000 filings. To that end, I'd just like to pose to each of you, and in this instance, Mr. Truong, we'll start with you and work our way back. What do you believe are some of the biggest challenges that you would face in transitioning to the D.C. Superior Court, and what is your plan to ensure a smooth transition?
Thank you, Senator. Your question really identified a critical issues confronting Superior Court at the moment. If confirmed to serve as a judge, one of the things I believe that can help with the many cases is to move cases through the courtroom efficiently. And with that in mind, I commit to hard work and to prepare myself as much as possible for each case, for each issue, and to set expectations for the parties appearing before me. And one of those expectations is that if cases are scheduled for a hearing, the hearing will go forward. I believe those expectations will make sure that the case will move through my courtrooms efficiently, and that should one of the many things to address the case backlog.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I believe that there are both external and internal factors that judges can employ in order to work efficiently and move cases through their courtrooms. By that, I mean externally, communication with the lawyers and the litigants about what is expected. I believe judges who have robust standing orders that set forth clear expectations for what will occur in the courtroom is important. So those are external factors in addition to what Mr. Truong said, which is folks should have the expectation if a hearing is set for a date, it moves forward. There, of course, are some due process concerns, and you have to consider whether there's good cause for not doing so. I think internally, judges have to hire the right staff that are going to be hardworking, mission-focused on getting justice to the litigants that appear before the court, and also believe you can systematize some things such that they run smoothly and efficiently through chambers.
Senator, the backlog issue that you've raised is certainly one of the biggest challenges that any of the D.C. Superior Court judges are facing. And I think it will be very helpful that in my practice, I've had a lot of experience dealing with heavy caseloads. I have developed the management skills and demonstrated the work ethic that I believe will be necessary to address this issue were I to be confirmed to the bench.
Thank you, Senator. As a magistrate judge for the past 8 years, I have presided over many of the high-volume calendars, and I think that that uniquely qualifies me to step in the role of an associate judge. As the deputy presiding magistrate judge, I am often called upon to preside over multiple calendars in different divisions in a singular day, and quite often many of the divisions within a week. I come to court prepared, and I think that being prepared and efficient are the most proactive measures to address the cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question, and I agree with my colleagues as well. As a magistrate judge, both Judge Bouchet and I both understand that the magistrate judges have had to roll up their sleeves to assist. Quite frankly, last 2 years I was assigned to juvenile new referrals, and the caseloads increased substantially between 2022 and 2023. But they have to be heard within 24 hours, so it doesn't matter how tired I might be or how long the day has been. I have to stay there and hear every case because they have to come through my courtroom. So it's not foreign, the idea of working hard. I'm prepared to do that and will continue to do so.
Thank you all for those thoughtful responses. My last question I would like to direct to Judge Bouchet and Mr. McKenzie. You both have backgrounds that involve our young leaders. Ms. Bouchet at Howard University and Mr. McKenzie as a classroom educator. There are instances on the rise where our young leaders are finding themselves interacting with our criminal justice system and our court system writ large. What lessons have you derived from your prior experiences working with our young leaders that prepare you to meet justice with them in this moment?
Well, I was proud to serve as the supervising attorney of the Family Justice Clinic at my alma mater, Howard University School of Law. It was an opportunity to train the young minds of tomorrow's leaders. When I see individuals who appear before me, I hope to serve as a message of what is possible for them. In my experience, supervising the students has also allowed me to have a certain level of understanding, compassion, as I communicate with individuals when they appear before me. Thank you.
Time's run, but can I answer? So I guess the biggest takeaway, and I'll keep this brief, from teaching is showing my students they yearn for boundaries and providing boundaries. I think is very important. And when folks find themselves perhaps in the wrong position on the wrong side of the law, they need to know, one, that I'm an inspiration. I've been where they've been, but also I'm here to help them get back to the right path. And they need rules and guidelines and boundaries in order to find themselves back on the right path.
Thank you, Senator Butley. Senator Hawley, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Ms. Johnston, if I could just start with you. You work at a large corporate firm here in town, I think. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
You, according to the materials you submitted, you have represented, among other clients, the Boeing company since 2013. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
According to the same materials, for much of this representation, you've served as the primary or the lead counsel for Boeing. Is that correct?
In In certain matters, I did.
Is that litigation still ongoing?
No, it is not.
There's a case in particular I want to ask you about. It's a case that featured breach of contract claim, fraud claims, and trade secret claims by a company called Alabama Aircraft Industries. They allege that Boeing stole proprietary information when the two companies were working together on a joint bid for an Air Force contract. Now, a federal jury had already determined that Boeing owed this company $2.1 million for violating the bidding contract and for breaching a non-disclosure agreement. Boeing had previously, in 2006, paid a $615 million settlement to DOJ to settle claims that it had illegally obtained competitors' information with lucrative government contracts. And as I'm sure you're aware, Boeing has been at the center of major, major concerns about whistleblower retaliation, safety of its planes. In fact, we've heard testimony right here in this committee about all of that. Here's what I'm getting at. Boeing has engaged in corporate behavior in a pattern going back years now that, shall we say, is less than model. Do you have any thoughts about your representation of this company? Any regrets, any concerns?
In my work as an advocate, I have been duty-bound to zealously advocate for my client's best interests, and that is what I have done. As a neutral judge, I am very mindful that my role instead would be to apply faithfully and impartially the law to the specific facts that appear before me, and that is what I would do.
No moral qualms at all?
I believe that it has always been a strength of mine to be able to see the shared humanity in every one of my clients, no matter the issue. And I understand that as a judge, my role would be to fairly and impartially apply the law, no matter the parties or the issue that was before me, and that is what I would do.
Well, shared humanity, this is a corporation, though, isn't it? It's one of the biggest corporations in the world.
It is.
And one of the most profitable corporations in the world. I assume you chose to represent them voluntarily. I mean, right? You weren't forced to represent Boeing.
It was the case I was assigned to at my firm.
But you continued to do it. You served as lead counsel, I thought. There's multiple pieces of litigation in which you served as primary lead counsel for Boeing, correct?
There are multiple Boeing matters that I've
Yeah.
handled.
Okay, let me ask you about a different corporation that you've represented, the 3M Corporation, huge multinational conglomerate. In this case, the plaintiff was an individual named Jonathan Vaughn. He was an Iraq War veteran. He alleged that he'd suffered hearing loss stemming from his use of defective earplugs manufactured by your client. Vaughn was awarded $2.2 million in that case. Here's a report from the case. The jury decided that 3M's earplugs were to blame for his current hearing impairment, while also determining the earplugs were unreasonably dangerous, according to the verdict form. 3M misrepresented the quality of the earplugs and was negligent in their design. The report goes on to note that at the time of this verdict, this was the 9th of 15 cases against 3M to go against them in litigation over these earplugs. Just any conclusions or reflections on your involvement in that case?
Senator, I've had a varied practice handling cases that span the spectrum of legal issues and representing a wide range of parties throughout my career. And I believe that the litigation matters and the variation in the work that I have done has given me a very strong and versatile litigation skill set and a comfort in the courtroom that would serve me well were I to be confirmed to be a judge on the D.C. Superior Court.
Okay, so you're not concerned is what I take from it. I mean, you don't have any regrets about representing either of these corporations in these various matters?
I believe that I have had a strong litigation practice throughout my career.
Well, I heard that part, but I'm just asking if you have any regrets, if you have any qualms. Sounds like you don't, which is fine. I just want to. I mean, obviously you're a very talented person. You've done terrific work. You were made partner at a very early age, so you have a lot of skill. I'm just trying to figure out why you've chosen to use it for these particular clients.
I do not have regrets about my career. I believe that I have developed a strong litigation skill set that would serve me well as a judge.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I have concerns. Obviously, I don't love the representation. These big corporate clients, these huge corporations, they've got so much influence in this capital. They've got so much influence in our economy. They've got probably every law firm in America lined up to represent them. And, I just think sometimes we got to ask ourselves, I mean, do these people doing these kind of things or ripping off people like Jonathan Vaughn, I mean, do they really need our representation? Obviously, every client's entitled to a vigorous defense, sure. But we still have to ask ourselves, I'm an attorney myself, we still have to ask ourselves as attorneys, should we be representing them? I mean, do we want to do that? Obviously, it's your judgment, so I'm not suggesting you've done anything wrong. I mean, it's 100% your judgment, and you did your job well. But I have to say, it concerns me a little bit. I'm almost out of time. Mr. McKenzie, I just want to ask you one thing really quickly here before my time expires. You wrote a letter in 2021 asking then Vice President Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment. I just want to quote you to make sure I get this right. You asked, that's the removal from office provision, the unfitness from office provision of the Constitution. So you urged then VP Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment against then President Trump to declare to the leaders of Congress that the president's unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. You went on to say that then President Trump was unfit for office and a reckless and wanton threat to the Constitution. Does that still reflect your views?
Senator, I do want to correct the record. I didn't write the letter. Along with hundreds of other folks, signed on to the letter because we were concerned about the events of January 6th.
Okay, you signed the letter, though.
Absolutely.
Does that still represent your views?
I signed the letter, Senator. I was concerned about January 6th.
Yeah, and you haven't changed your view at all that the ex-president is unfit for office, a reckless and wanton threat to the Constitution?
Under the Judicial Code of Ethics, if that matter were to come before me, it would be inappropriate for me to state my position at this time. So I'm precluded from stating that position.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if your views changed. I think you've answered my question. I think your answer is you stand by it. You signed it. You stand by it. Is that fair to say? I'm not trying to get how you rule out a case. On a case. I'm just trying to figure out. You signed the letter. I just want to make sure that you haven't changed your views. I think you've answered my question. I think you said you stand by it. Don't let me put words in your mouth. But is that correct? You signed it. You stand by it. Is that fair to say?
It is correct that I signed the letter.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Carper, you're recognized for your questions.
Thanks. Welcome to the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, which a long time ago I had the privilege to chair and to serve with these fellows and with a guy named Tom Coburn that was, I think, your predecessor, if I'm not mistaken. And we have a tradition of being a bipartisan committee, and we don't see enough of that in the House and the Senate these days, especially in the House. But hopefully you'll see it here today. But I want to thank our distinguished nominees for being here this morning, for your willingness to serve on the D.C. Superior Court. I'm a recovering governor. There are another recovering governors. My colleagues would say not really recovered. And in our state and a lot of states, governors nominate people to serve on a variety of courts. That's true in Delaware. And we have advisory committees that recommend people for us. But at the end of the day, in Delaware, the Senate ends up taking the handoff from the governors, and it's a pretty good approach. And we try to do it in a bipartisan way. We try to do it in a way that we don't waste time and that we don't leave the people of Delaware without the kind of judiciary that's needed to help people in their lives, businesses in their lives, and so forth. So I sort of kind of at today's hearing with that in mind. But every time this committee holds a hearing on D.C. Judicial nominees, my colleagues hear me share my concern with extensive judicial vacancies on local D.C. courts. These concerns persist to this day because too many vacancies still plague the district courts. Last month, the chief judges of both the D.C. Superior Court and the Court of Appeals sent an open letter to the U.S. Senate urging us to immediately fill the vacancies on both courts. And despite judicial nominees regularly passing out of this committee, many with bipartisan support, as I said earlier. There is frequently still a months-long delay before they are confirmed on the Senate floor itself. And as my colleagues have heard me say more than a few times, justice delayed is justice denied. Currently, there are 6 nominees to the D.C. Superior Court that are still awaiting a vote on the Senate floor who have passed out of this committee, and I'm glad that Senator Schumer has filed cloture on 2 of those nominees and that these nominees should be confirmed, could be confirmed as soon as this week. Hallelujah. And with that said, only 1 D.C. judicial nominee has been confirmed this entire Congress. I think that's disgraceful. I think that's really disgraceful. And it's unacceptable that the local D.C. courts have vacancies that last years because the Senate fails to act in a timely way. The system is, if it's as it stands, is not working. We need to reform it. I introduced, as some of you know, D.C. Court's Judicial Vacancy Reduction Act to do just that by applying a 60-day congressional review period to D.C. judicial nominees to streamline this nomination process. Faster confirmation process in the U.S. Senate would help with the vacancy crisis and better equip the local courts here to serve the people of the District of Columbia. It's with this in mind that I would move into my questions for the nominees. First question, again, going back to the time I served as governor of Delaware, and considering potential candidates to serve on Delaware's highly regarded Supreme Court and Court of Chancery, I look for a number of characteristic or attributes. And I was always interested in sound moral character. I was interested in nominees with a complete knowledge of the law, a willingness to listen to both sides of an argument, judicial temperament, and the ability to make difficult decisions with sound reasoning. Could each of you please take a minute to discuss the importance of having these attributes as a judge and how, if confirmed, you would bring these qualities to the District of Columbia Superior Court as an associate judge? Is it Beatty? Beatty Arthur. Ms. Beatty Arthur, please.
Pushing the button. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's critical what you're describing. You know, we spent a lot of time today talking about the backlog, but still being a good judge and full of the appropriate demeanor and character is essential. I think that when I think about for example, my judicial philosophy, it needs to be at the forefront that everyone deserves an opportunity to be heard. But important with that is the ability to objectively apply the law to the facts and to run a courtroom with dignity and respect. Also, another idea that is important to be mindful of is that a lot of the people that appear in front of us are pro se. It is important to be able to use plain language. It is to be able to understand how they arrive at the court. So I think all of those attributes are critical to be a good judicial officer.
Great, thank you for that. Ms. Bouchet?
Yes. My judicial philosophy is grounded in the principles of fundamental fairness, judicial integrity, neutrality, affording the parties who appear before me a fair opportunity to be heard, to make their arguments, to also apply the law faithfully and objectively to their cases, and to render timely decisions. When parties appear before me who are unrepresented, I take the time to make sure that they are aware of the legal resources that are available to them so that they can make sound legal decisions, as I am unable to provide counsel to them. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Ms. Johnston?
Senator, to me, the proper role of a judge is to faithfully apply the law to the specific facts at hand and to make sure to always do so with a dedication to the rule of law, with an open mind and impartiality, and with dignity and respect for all of the parties involved in the litigation process.
Good, thanks. Mr. McKenzie?
Thank you, Senator. I think all of those attributes that you mentioned in the lead up of your question are key. People come to court because they can't settle disputes or they've gotten into some sort of trouble, but they need to be recognized as humans and as people deserving of respect. And I think judges being able to do that is very important.
Thank you. Mr. Truong?
Thank you, Senator. I share my fellow nominees' insightful observations. I would like to add that if confirmed as a judge, I will commit to the ideals of impartiality, the ideals of fairness, and I will approach each case with an open mind without prejudgment. And I believe that should, is the undergird the ideals of judicial philosophy.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would just, if I could have 10 more seconds. I'll never forget a conversation I had with one of my people I was interviewing for a judgeship in Delaware a long time ago. And he invoked the golden rule. You know, he said one of their jobs of a job is to make sure that that judge, he or she, treat other people in the courtroom the way they'd want to be treated. And I think for me, when I'm trying to figure out what to do, I usually default to the golden rule, and I think in this case it's a pretty good guide as well. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And my thanks to all of you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Marshall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, and welcome to our nominees this morning. My first two questions are yes/no questions. We're limited on time. I hope you can give me a yes or no answer, and if you don't, I'll have to interrupt you if it's a long one. So the first one is, do you believe non-citizens are lawfully allowed to vote in the District of Columbia elections? Do you believe non-citizens are lawfully allowed to vote in District of Columbia elections? We'll just go down the row here. Ms. Beatty Arthur.
I'm not familiar with the case law that supports that, so I would not be able to give you an educated answer with that.
Ms. Bouchet.
Yes, likewise, I'm not aware of any law that gives them the authority to vote. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnston.
That is not an issue that I have studied, but if it were to come before me as a judge, I would certainly evaluate the relevant precedent to apply it to the facts at hand.
Okay. Mr. McKenzie.
I'm not aware of any law or rule in that regard, so I can't say yes or no.
Okay. Mr. Truong.
Senator, similarly, I'm not aware of the legal issues on that.
Okay. The follow-up question is, do you believe illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote in D.C. elections? Do you believe illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote in D.C. elections? Maybe we'll start this way and go backwards. Mr. Truong.
Thank you, Senator. Again, I'm not aware of the mandates or D.C. law on that issue, so I'm unable to answer that question at this time.
Mr. McKenzie.
My decision on that, if it were to come before me, would be based on the law and controlling precedent. I'm not aware of it as I sit here today.
Ms. Johnston.
I am not familiar with any law on that issue and would need to review that law before making a decision if it were to come before me as a judge.
Ms. Bouchet.
As a sitting judge, I'm not in a position, I'm not permitted to speak as to policy. If the law was in place and a case came before me, I would apply the law to the facts before me. Thank you.
Ms. Beatty Arthur.
Similarly, I'm also a sitting judge, and I'm precluded from making any assessments as to the appropriateness of that until it becomes a law.
Okay. My next question for Mr. McKenzie. This last October, a young person testified before the House Judiciary Committee about being the victim of an armed robbery on the streets of D.C. The criminal responsible was sentenced to just 1 year in prison, despite the criminal having robbed 6 victims and 2 businesses. After his release, the criminal went on to rob 2 more persons at gunpoint. I guess this is the bigger picture I'm after here, Mr. McKenzie, is what kind of message does that send to criminals in D.C.? And if confirmed, will you be tough on sentencing for violent repeat offenders?
Senator, I believe as a father of 3, a husband of 1, public safety is a paramount issue. I'm concerned about crime every day living in the city. What I will commit to is if I'm confirmed to this position, I'll take a look at the facts of the case, look at the law that applies, and I will impose a fair and just sentence as required by D.C. law.
Okay. Ms. Bouchet, would you answer that question too? What kind of message does this send to criminals in D.C.? And if confirmed, will you be tough on sentencing for violent repeat offenders?
Crime and public safety are concerns of mine. I was a single mother with young children, so I appreciate the significance of it. I believe the role of the court to address crime and public safety is to adjudicate the criminal cases that are before them, and I would, if confirmed as an associate judge, apply the standard guidelines pursuant to our criminal code.
I want to continue down this path of my personal concern about crime in D.C. I'm concerned when my family is here to walk more than a block or 2 from the Capitol. I'm concerned about my staff walking, the safety of my staff walking to and from the Capitol as well. In 2023, here in D.C., there were 274 homicides, 185 sexual assaults, 959 carjackings, 1,400 assaults with deadly weapons, 6,829 motor vehicle thefts. Just over the last 18 months, members of Congress and their staff have been assaulted, carjacked, robbed, and stabbed. This last October, the Senate Sergeant of Arms sent a bulletin out recommending that Senate staff drive with their windows up to avoid traveling alone in order to prevent getting carjacked in our nation's capital. Again, good 7,000 car thefts last year. That's quite a few each day. In January 2023, the D.C. Council passed a bill that rewrote D.C. criminal code. It eliminated life sentences and got rid of a mandatory minimum sentencing for every crime other than first-degree murder. Under this rewrite, the maximum penalty for any individual convicted of using a gun to commit an act of violence dropped from 15 to 4 years. I guess the question to all of you, have time, several of you mentioned this. What is your level of concern for crime in the district, and what is your role in here? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Truong and just go down if you got a second.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. As a father of a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter raising a family in Washington, D.C., the crime issue is a forefront issue in my family. However, if confirmed as a judge in D.C., I'm committed to following the sentencing guidelines, the applicable laws, and impose a just consequence when the case is presented to me.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie, you basically answered the question already, but anything to add?
No, Senator.
Good answer. Ms. Johnston, go ahead.
Resident, mother raising 3 young children here. I think the public safety in this city is one of the most important concerns for the district. And if given the opportunity to serve as a judge on the DC Superior Court, my role would be to swiftly and effectively endeavor to resolve cases as quickly as possible so that the parties involved can have an appropriate resolution.
Ms. Bouchet, you answered parts of the question. Anything you would like to add?
I would just like to thank the committee for having our nomination hearing. Our court needs more able bodies to quickly and adjudicate the criminal cases that come before it, and I think that that is the most powerful tool that we will have to address public safety in the District of Columbia.
Ms. Beatty Arthur.
I'm in complete agreement with my colleague, Judge Bouchet. That is the best way to assist. And I, shout it from the rooftops. I'm very proud to be a native Washingtonian, but I would be absolutely remiss if I did not address the crime problem.
Thank you. Senator Langford, recognized for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. It is a long process to get to this day. It's a long process past this day, as some of you have seen as well. And there's a lot that's engaged in this. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your families being here, and for all of you introducing your family. It's great to be able to see a very full room today with a lot of family members literally sitting behind you, as I'm sure they've been behind you a lot. Mr. Truong, I am tempted to ask every one of my questions to you because of the smiling 4-year-old over your shoulder, that every time the camera comes on you, it's fantastic. You have no idea what's happening behind you, but it's awesome. So you'll get a chance to watch the video of it later. I'm tempted to do that, but I'm not going to ask you every single question on it. You've been here before on that. Thank you for continuing to be patient as we go through this process.
Thank you, sir.
I really do appreciate that. And for several of you that mentioned your faith and your own personal journey and your personal life, thanks for the transparency of that as well, to be able to make that very clear. A couple of things that I want to just be able to bring up. Most every one of you have either used the term or reaffirmed this justice delayed is justice denied, and have talked about how quick you will move cases. That is one of the prime issues for me. It's not just that we have someone there, that if someone actually comes, that I'll just say it, a lawyer who didn't do their homework doesn't get a slap on the wrist from the judge. The judge makes it very clear, we expect you to do your homework because I did my homework, and the client that you're representing needs justice and needs to be heard. So avoiding continuances, almost all of you have mentioned I do appreciate that, and I would tell you from our side of the dais, that's extremely important, and it's one of the things that we would expect judges in the D.C. court to actually do, is to make sure that everyone does their job, to be able to make sure everyone has a fair day in court and they have the opportunity to be heard. All of you have also mentioned things about fairness to the individual. I would just reiterate, you didn't have to say it, but let me make it clear. Fairness to the victim is also extremely important as well, and to the potential victims that are on the street, that they also want to know that they're being treated fairly also in the process. So there is an expectation to say, when people come before you, you're representing not only D.C., but for the millions of visitors that come through D.C., that they have an expectation that there are judges that are both not delaying cases, but they're also equally and fairly applying the law to be able to protect every person that's here and to make sure everyone has their opportunity to be able to heard in court. So I do appreciate those answers that several of you have already given on that. I do need to drill down just to be able to clarify some things as we've gone through several issues with our staff, and as we have talked through several things before on this, I want to drill down a couple of things. Ms. Beatty Arthur, by the way, I loved your opening statement on that. That was great, introducing your family and your faith and the journey that you've had here. Getting a chance to be able to work down the hall from your husband will be an interesting journey as well on that. That'll always be interesting, getting a chance to be able to talk cases over dinner and what actually happens next. You had a statement that you made at one point that I want to just be able to give you the opportunity to respond to. You were asked in a talk several years ago just about judicial activism, and in that talk you made this statement: I'm certain that in some unwritten place in the back of my mind, my race is affecting my decisions every day when I have cases that involve black people. So I, as a person, as just as an entity, I get that statement and that perspective. You also made the same statement about I didn't really understand my blackness until I had a black son. Now I have several black friends, and they talk openly on that journey with their sons and what it's like, especially with law enforcement interactions. I want to give you an opportunity to be able to talk about that, because the reason I say that is, if an Asian family is in front of you in your court, if a Hispanic family is in front of you in court, whoever it may be, I don't want that statement to sit in front of them to think I can't get a fair hearing because I'm going to be treated differently than someone else in the court. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you, Senator. But I think what's important to note, and I don't recall the exact language I used at that talk, but I think what's important to note is that judicial activism is never appropriate in the courtroom. The statement that I didn't really understand, I think what you mentioned was the blackness until I had a black son. Right. I think it pushed it to the forefront, my discussion and thoughts about being black. But no matter what, when I wake up tomorrow, I'll be a black woman. That is still important to me. But who I am does not affect the type how I handle my cases. Between the Office of Administrative Hearings and the Superior Court, I've heard thousands of cases, and I push any thoughts or ideas or about race to the side, because every person that appears in front of me has an important moment, regardless of what their race or ethnicity is. I'm not, judicial activism is inappropriate in the courtroom setting. So I understand your question, but that's not who I am as a judge. And that's how how I provide myself in the courtroom setting.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you for that. Mr. Bouchet, several members that are sitting in front of me have had some political activity in the past and donations that they've done personally on that. You're one of the folks that's here that at previous times, previous to you being a magistrate judge, you did political donations. How do you separate your politics from being on the bench and trying to say, okay, everyone has a political perspective. Everybody does. So how do you keep those two things separate when it is known what your political perspective is, but you're also sitting on the bench trying to be fair and equal?
Thank you, Senator. Quite simply, I don't consult my personal feelings when I'm on the bench. I have, as the deputy presiding magistrate judge, as a magistrate judge for the past 8 years, I have presided over more than 27,000 cases, and individuals from all parties have appeared before me. My role is to consider the facts, objectively apply the law, and render a timely decision. And that's what I've done as a magistrate judge. That is what I intend to do if I am confirmed as an associate judge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnston, Mr. McKenzie was asked a question earlier about a letter that he had signed on to in the past. By the way, there's a special place in heaven for sixth grade teachers. I just have to tell you that as a former youth pastor myself, there's no time in a boy's life more interesting than sixth grade. And so for teachers that teach sixth grade, that's an impressive time for you to engage on that. Mr. McKenzie answered a question about a letter that he had signed on to earlier. You have a letter that you had signed on to right after the Dobbs decision. And in that letter, it makes a statement: the court has failed to uphold the promise at the very core of the Constitution, the promise of liberty, dispassionate, fair, and equal treatment for all under the law. Obviously, the court decision for the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision was really not a decision about abortion so much as who should decide on that. Should that be in the court, or should that be in the legislature, states, federal, whatever it may be? So I want to press down on this a little bit, just on that perspective, because I understand personal perspectives on abortion. You and I probably have differences of agreement on that. But it's the statement about the court has failed to uphold the promise of the Constitution, when really the decision was about court shouldn't decide this, the people should decide this. That's a different constitutional statement on it. So I want to give you the opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you, Senator. My personal views would not be a factor in my decisions as a judge, and I want to be very clear that Dobbs is the law of the land, and as a judge, my role would be to faithfully apply all binding precedent, including Dobbs, to any case that were to appear before me.
Okay.
And that is what I would do.
I appreciate it. It's not an unknown statement on this. I see them over time. I apologize. We've had issues, for instance, in Washington, D.C., where there were 5 children that were found, the bodies that were identified, that looks like it was from a late-term partial birth abortion, which is not legal in Washington, D.C. Those bodies were identified, and then there's been this ongoing conversation about what's the follow-up. So the abortion question is not so much a question that's only federal or local or state or for the district, but it does come in criminal cases as well, and trying to be able to figure out what to do in a case, as we saw several years ago in Philadelphia, where late-term partial birth illegal abortions were being done, and they had to be able to follow through on that. That could be a case coming before you as well. Obviously, you're in Washington, D.C., and it'll be important that the law is applied no matter what the law is and based on what preferences are.
Yes, as a judge, I would be duty-bound to follow the law wherever it takes the case, and that is a duty I would take very seriously.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank all of our nominees for joining us here today and for your willingness to take on these very important and challenging positions. The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, and without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record, with the exception of the financial data, which is on file and available for public inspection at the committee offices. The hearing record will remain open until 12 p.m. tomorrow, June 5th, for the submission of statements and questions. For the record, this hearing is now adjourned.